Hello and welcome. My name's Sissy and I'm Timothy's widow. Grief isn't just a feeling. It's an experience that can ripple through every aspect of our lives, including our mental well-being. For many of us navigating the grief journey, many of us have either heard or said the phrase, grief can feel like a roller coaster. There are highs, lows, twists, and turns. The emotions that we feel can resemble an intense storm. Navigating grief is an emotionally complex process. There's an intricate relationship between grief and mental health. By exploring that relationship, we can better equip ourselves to cope, know when to seek help, and work towards finding a path towards healing and resilience. Let's begin the journey of understanding as we uncover the intricate relationship between grief and mental health. To begin exploring the intersection of grief and mental health, we need to start with the emotional toll of grief. In this section, we'll dive deep into the emotional landscape of grief and explore the profound emotional toll it can take. Grief isn't just sadness, it's a complex mix of emotions that can affect us on multiple levels. So, we'll look at the different emotions that we experience as we journey through grief and begin looking at when they might indicate a decline in mental health during the grief journey and when it might be time to seek help and support. The first emotion that we're going to talk about is profound sadness. Of course, grief often brings profound sadness, a sense of loss that can be overwhelming. It's natural to feel like a part of you is missing, and this sadness can ebb and flow, making it challenging to predict when it will hit the hardest. While sadness is a very natural part of grief, it should gradually, over time, become more manageable instead of continuing to remain persistent and overwhelming with no improvement over time. The next emotion that we're going to take a look at is anger and frustration. Grief can also manifest as anger or frustration. You might find yourself angry at the situation, angry at others, and yes, even angry at the person that you've lost. These feelings are, of course, normal, and they are part of the grieving process. Even though anger and frustration are very natural parts of the grief journey, these feelings should gradually become more manageable as well. It's when they remain constant and either show no improvement or become more intense over time that we need to consider the impact on our emotional and physical health. Number 3 is guilt and regret. Many people experience guilt and regret during their grief journey. You may question whether you did enough for your loved one or whether you could have prevented their loss. These feelings can be incredibly burdensome and may become all-consuming. Excessive guilt or feelings of worthlessness related to your loss can be indicative of depression. Another very common set of emotions felt during the grief journey would be anxiety and fear. Grief can trigger anxiety and fear about the future. You might worry about how you'll manage without your loved one or what the future holds. These anxieties can be paralyzing at times. Intense anxiety, including panic attacks, can be triggered or exasperated by grief. If these symptoms persist and interfere with daily life, seeking help is crucial. Number 5 is loneliness and isolation. Grief often brings a profound sense of loneliness. You may feel like no one truly understands your pain, leading to isolation and withdrawal from social activities. Grief can make socializing difficult. Complete withdrawal and isolation from friends and family, especially for an extended period of time, may indicate a deeper issue. The next thing that we're going to look at is confusion and disorientation. It's common to feel confused and disoriented during the grief journey. You may struggle with concentration, memory, or making decisions. This can be particularly frustrating. Grief can affect cognitive functioning, but severe and persistent difficulty with concentration, memory, or decision making may be a sign of a mental health issue. The emotional toll of navigating the grief journey can also manifest itself physically. You might experience fatigue, headaches, changes in appetite, and difficulty sleeping. These physical symptoms are connected to the emotional distress. Physical symptoms such as extreme fatigue, unexplained aches, or digestive issues can sometimes be manifestations of underlying mental health issues related to grief. Severe and prolonged changes in appetite leading to significant weight loss or gain can be a sign of mental health struggles. Grief can disrupt sleep, but severe insomnia or excessive sleeping can also be signs of a mental health problem. Pay attention to significant and prolonged changes in sleep patterns. Severe and prolonged changes in appetite leading to significant weight loss or gain can be a sign of struggling with your mental health. Grief does not follow a linear path. You may experience waves of intense grief that seem to come out of nowhere. These moments can be challenging, but they are a natural part of the process. On the other end of the spectrum, you might feel numb or emotionally flat. This can make you wonder if you're grieving correctly, but it's important to remember that everyone's grief journey is unique. If someone loses interest in activities they once enjoyed and cannot derive pleasure from anything, it could be a sign of depression, which often accompanies complicated grief. If someone neglects self-care, hygiene, or basic daily responsibilities for an extended period, it may indicate a struggle with mental health issues. Grief often involves a deep sense of longing and yearning for the person that you've lost. You might find yourself imagining their presence or replaying memories. Another issue that can emerge during the grief journey is substance abuse or dependence. During the grief journey, many will show signs of significant changes in personality, such as becoming irritable, agitated, or withdrawn. Many people struggling with grief will then turn towards the use of alcohol or drugs, which can also show to others as a significant personality change in the grieving spouse. Substance abuse often co-occurs with mental health challenges. Perhaps the most critical sign to recognize is any mention or expression of self-harm or suicidal thoughts. Take any such statements or behaviors extremely seriously, and please seek immediate help. As you navigate your grief journey, it's essential to understand that grief is not a linear process. This emotional roller coaster is a normal part of grieving. You may cycle through these emotions, sometimes feeling several of them simultaneously. It's crucial to remember that grief affects everyone differently, and not everyone who experiences grief will develop mental health issues. However, if you or someone you know is exhibiting several of these signs and they persist for an extended period, it's essential to seek professional help. Mental health support can make a significant difference in navigating grief more effectively. I think a good activity for you to consider this weekend is to sit and reflect upon how your emotions and how you've been navigating the grief journey have been coming along for you. Perhaps sit and take a journal and just simply write down things that you have noticed, things that you are struggling with. By taking the time to do some personal self-reflection, you may notice some of these emotions affecting you in a way that may indicate that you are struggling with the challenge and that it might be time to seek some more professional help. Remember, these emotional responses are entirely normal when you're grieving. There is no right way to grieve, and everyone's experience is unique. The complexity and diverse range and intensity of emotions experienced during grief may affect your mental health, but there are steps that you can take to seek help when needed. The next thing that we want to discuss while we're exploring the intersection of grief and mental health is complicated grief. Complicated grief, or prolonged grief disorder, or persistent complex bereavement disorder, is a psychological condition that significantly impairs a grieving spouse's ability to function in daily life. It is characterized by a prolonged and intense grieving process that goes beyond the normal range of grief reactions and is typically diagnosed when the symptoms persist for an extended period, often exceeding 6 months or more after the loss of a loved one. To better understand complicated grief, let's take a look at some of the symptoms. The first would be intense, long-term grief. Individuals with complicated grief continue to experience intense and distressing grief symptoms long after their loss, often without improvement over time. They may experience an intense and persistent sadness that endures. It simply doesn't improve as time progresses. The next characteristic of complicated grief would be intrusive thoughts and memories. These would be persistent and intrusive thoughts, memories, or dreams about your loved one or the circumstances around the loss. If you're suffering from complicated grief, you may be engaging in avoidance behaviors. Some individuals actively go to great lengths to avoid reminders or situations of their loved one that may trigger their grief, which can lead to social isolation and difficulty engaging in normal activities. Grieving spouses who are experiencing symptoms of complicated grief may feel emotional numbness. In addition to intense grief, complicated grief can involve a sense of emotional numbness or feeling disconnected from other people and daily life. Another symptom of complicated grief is difficulty accepting the loss. With complicated grief, the grieving spouse may struggle to accept the reality of the loss. Acceptance of the loss is often delayed or incomplete in complicated grief. Some grieving spouses may even deny that their loss has occurred. In complicated grief, we can often see prolonged functional impairment. With complicated grief, the grief symptoms can lead to significant functional impairment in various areas of life, including work, relationships, and self-care. With complicated grief, there may also be a strong and persistent desire to be reunited with the loved one. Also with complicated grief, the grieving spouse may have difficulty finding joy or satisfaction in life without their loved one. With complicated grief, the grieving spouse may also have persistent feelings of loneliness and emptiness, even in the presence of supportive friends and family. The grief journey is unique and highly individualized. The duration and intensity of grieving can vary widely from person to person. It's important to remember that not everyone who experiences intense grief has complicated grief. However, when grief symptoms become overwhelming and prolonged to the extent that they significantly disrupt daily life and functioning, it may be a sign of complicated grief. Treatment and support can be beneficial in managing and healing from complicated grief, so seeking professional help if you're experiencing these symptoms is crucial to your emotional and physical health. With complicated grief, certain factors can increase the risk of developing complicated grief, such as sudden or traumatic loss, a lack of social support, a history of mental health issues, or a complicated relationship with the loved one. It's important to differentiate between complicated grief and the natural grieving process. While grief does involve a wide range of emotions, complicated grief is characterized by its prolonged and disruptive nature. Recognizing complicated grief or prolonged grief disorder is the first step towards seeking and receiving professional help. Mental health professionals can provide specialized complicated grief therapies tailored to address these conditions. Seeking professional help for grief-related mental health challenges is a sign of strength, not weakness. Unfortunately, there is still stigma around mental health issues, but remember that taking care of your mental well-being is a brave and wise choice. Grief is a unique and personal journey, and professional help can provide the tools and support needed to navigate it effectively. It's not about getting over your loss, but finding a way to live with it and eventually find hope and meaning again. Remember, seeking professional help is a significant step towards healing, and it's a decision that can make a profound difference in your mental health and overall well-being. Remember that your grief journey is unique. There's no one-size-fits-all approach. It's okay to experience a wide range of emotions. When struggling with grief-related mental health challenges, it's a courageous and powerful choice to reach out to friends, family, support groups, or mental health professionals. Many have walked this path and found healing and hope in the darkest moments. Stay connected to support, friends, family, support groups, and mental health professionals for connections that can provide ongoing strength and comfort. Grief is not a linear process. There is no timeline for healing. Allow yourself to grieve at your own pace. While the pain of grief may never fully disappear, you can find a way to live with your loss and discover new sources of joy and meaning. Grief is a transformative experience. Your journey can lead to newfound resilience, empathy, and wisdom. Consider reaching out to others who are grieving. Your understanding and compassion can make a profound difference. Before closing today's video, I extend my heartfelt love and condolences to those who are grieving. Your strength, resilience, and capacity for love are extraordinary. You are not alone, and there is hope for brighter days ahead. As always, thank you so much for joining me today. I always close out by asking you, the viewer, to please like, share, and subscribe so that you'll know when new content is available. Please feel free to comment on any video. I'd love to hear from you. And remember the polls I have created in the community section. Your participation helps me work on future content, and it helps that YouTube Analytic, which can help my channel grow to continue my mission to help others grieving the loss of a loved one. I've been Sissy, and I am wishing you much hope, light, and love. Until the next time, my friend, take care.